When my partner said he was going for a walk that night around 8 o'clock, I didn't think much of it. The baby had finally fallen asleep, and the house was quiet for the first time all day. I remember sitting there on the couch, still in my robe, my hands resting on my belly even though my baby was already 2 months old. It was just a habit now, like my body still hadn't let go of the feeling of carrying him inside me. He said, "I'll just go clear my head for a bit," and smiled at me. I smiled back. I didn't know that smile would be the last calm moment we'd share for a long time. An hour later, my phone rang. His voice sounded shaky. He said the police had stopped him, that they wanted him to go for an interview. He said not to worry. I remember my chest tightening, but I tried to stay calm. "Okay," I said softly. "Just let me know when you're home." He promised he would, but that night, he didn't come home. At 3 in the morning, I woke up to feed my baby. The room was dark except for the dim blue light from the nightlamp. I looked at his side of the bed. Still empty. I called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Something inside me broke a little. I tried to tell myself he was safe. Maybe still with the police. Maybe sorting something out. But then, as I scrolled through my phone, half asleep, half anxious, I saw something that made my heart stop. His cousin had tagged him in a photo. They were at a club, laughing, drinks in hand. My baby's father, the man who said he was being questioned by police, was out partying. I opened my bank app. $160 gone. The same money we'd just received. Money meant for diapers and baby clothes. I felt my chest tighten again. This time it wasn't anxiety. It was heartbreak. I didn't even cry that night. I just sat there, holding my baby close, staring at that photo on my phone. The world felt so quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. When the morning came, I posted on his Facebook, asking for the house keys so I could buy nappies. His friend replied, said he was sleeping at his place. I knew then that everything had changed. He didn't come home until more than 24 hours later. And when he finally walked through that door, acting as if nothing happened, I realized the man I trusted most could also be the one who hurt me deepest. That was the night I began to see love differently, not as something soft and safe, but as something that could make you bleed quietly, even while you smiled for your baby. Before everything became heavy between us, there was a time when I thought I had found my forever. We met 3 years ago. I still remember the first time he looked at me. Not in a way that made me feel nervous, but in a way that made me feel seen. I was standing outside a cafe, holding a coffee, fumbling with my phone, and he asked if I needed help finding something. I laughed and said, "Just trying to find my peace." He smiled and said, "If you find it, let me know. I've been looking too." Something about that moment stayed with me. Maybe it was his honesty, or maybe it was because for the first time in a long time, someone made me laugh without trying too hard. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he had this warmth that pulled me in. We started slow, long walks, cheap dinners, late night talks that turned into early mornings. He told me about his past, about how he wanted to do better in life. I believed him. I saw potential in him. Maybe more than he saw in himself. That's what love does sometimes. It makes you see the best parts of someone, even when they hide them from the world. When I found out I was pregnant, we were scared, but happy. I remember the day I told him. It was raining, and we were both sitting in the car. He went silent for a few seconds, then looked at me and said, "We'll make it work. I promise." That promise became my anchor. From that day on, I started preparing myself to be a mother. I watched videos, read books, made lists. Every kick I felt inside me felt like a miracle. A small heartbeat reminding me that love could create life. But pregnancy also showed me how lonely love can feel when it's one-sided. He started going out more. Said he needed to clear his head. Said he was stressed about being a dad. I tried to understand. I didn't want to nag him or make him feel trapped. Everyone handles change differently, right? That's what I kept telling myself. I spent most nights alone on the couch, rubbing my belly, whispering to my baby that everything would be okay, that we were okay. I started sleeping with one hand resting on my stomach, like I could protect both of us from whatever was coming. Then came the day I gave birth. I'll never forget it. The pain, the fear, the overwhelming rush of emotion when I finally held my baby boy in my arms. Everything felt worth it in that moment. The world fell silent except for his tiny cry. I looked at him, and for the first time I understood what unconditional love really meant. He was there, standing beside me, holding my hand. He looked proud, even teary-eyed. I remember thinking, this is it. This is our new beginning. But beginnings can be deceiving. After we came home, things changed again. Sleepless nights, bottles, diapers. Everything was new and exhausting. I was still healing, still trying to figure out who I was now, that I wasn't just me anymore. I was a mother, but I didn't feel like I had a partner beside me. He became distant, short-tempered. Sometimes I'd catch him scrolling on his phone late at night, smiling at something I couldn't see. When I'd ask, he'd say, "It's just a meme," or, "You're being paranoid." And I'd drop it because I didn't want to argue. I was tired. Tired in ways I didn't know how to explain. I tried to focus on the good moments. The mornings when he'd hold the baby and hum a tune. The afternoons when he'd say, "You're doing amazing." Those small words meant everything to me. I held on to them like they were proof that things were still okay. But inside, I was breaking slowly. Postpartum depression isn't something people like to talk about. You feel guilty for being sad when you're supposed to be grateful. You look at your baby and feel love so deep it hurts. But you also feel like you're drowning under the weight of it all. There were nights I'd sit on the edge of the bed and cry quietly, so I wouldn't wake the baby. He'd be out or asleep or just somewhere else in his mind. I wanted to reach for him, but it felt like he was miles away. Sometimes, he'd tell me I was too emotional, that I needed to toughen up. But how do you explain that your heart feels bruised from trying so hard? Still, I stayed patient. I thought love meant staying, forgiving, understanding. I thought if I just loved him enough, he'd see me again. The woman who believed in him before anyone else did. And for a while, I convinced myself he did care. He'd bring home small things. Flowers, my favorite snack, sometimes a little gift for the baby. Those moments made me forget everything else. But love built on temporary kindness can only last so long. I was still healing from childbirth, both physically and emotionally. But instead of resting, I was walking on eggshells, trying not to upset him, trying not to be too much, trying to keep peace. Little did I know that peace was already gone. It just hadn't hit me yet. The night he said he was going for a walk, that was when everything finally broke. I didn't know then that love could hurt in silence. That heartbreak could feel like watching someone you love slowly disappear while you're still standing right there, holding your baby in your arms. That night, when he said he was going for a walk around 8, I didn't think much of it. He had done it before. Said it helped him clear his head. I was sitting on the couch with the baby in my arms, watching a show with the volume low so the noise wouldn't wake him. He kissed my forehead before leaving and said, "I'll be back soon, okay?" I smiled and said, "Okay, don't stay out too long." The clock ticked quietly as the night got deeper. At first, I didn't worry. I thought maybe he'd gone to see a friend or needed space. But then, as hours passed, something in my chest started to ache. That strange feeling when your heart knows something your mind doesn't want to believe. At 9, I texted him. No reply. At 10, I called. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. By 11, I felt something close to panic. I walked around the living room, rocking the baby, staring at my phone like I could will it to ring. Then, around midnight, he finally called. His voice was rushed, nervous. "Hey," he said. Listen, the police stopped me. They're asking me to come in for a quick interview. I froze. What? Why? He said something about a misunderstanding that he'd explain later. His tone was calm, too calm. Then the call ended. I sat there in silence, confused. The baby stirred in my arms. I whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy will be back soon." But inside, I wasn't sure if I believed it. At 3 a.m, I woke up to feed my baby. The house was still quiet, the front door still locked. His side of the bed was still untouched. That's when I knew something wasn't right. Out of instinct, I checked Facebook. Maybe he'd messaged or posted something. Instead, I saw his cousin had tagged him in a photo at a club. I stared at the screen, blinking, trying to make sense of it. The caption said, "Good night with the boys." And there he was, smiling, drink in hand, standing under flashing lights. It felt like someone punched me in the chest. I opened my banking app, my hands trembling. He'd spent $160 from the money we'd just received to buy baby supplies. I remember whispering out loud, "Why would you do this?" I called his cousin from his account. She picked up, and before I could say a word, I heard his voice in the background. "Hang up. Don't talk to her." Then the call ended. That silence after was unbearable. I sat there in the dark, holding my baby close, trying not to cry too loud. I didn't want to wake him. He was too small to know the kind of pain adults cause each other. The next day, I posted on his Facebook, asking him to bring me the house keys so I could get the baby's nappies. A friend of his replied instead, saying, "He's sleeping at mine." I remember just staring at that message, feeling small. I felt like a stranger in my own life. Like everyone else knew what was happening, except me. He came back more than 24 hours later. No apology, no explanation that made sense. He looked tired, smelled of alcohol, and said, "You're overreacting. I just needed to relax. Relax." While I was home, bleeding, healing, feeding, barely sleeping, he was relaxing. I wanted to scream, but my voice came out small. "You lied to me. You said the police." He cut me off. "I didn't want you to stress. You just had the baby. I didn't want to upset you." I stood there, heart pounding. "But you upset me anyway." He rolled his eyes, said something about how I was always making things bigger than they were. I let him talk, but I felt something inside me shift. A quiet breaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of him smiling in the club. I tried to convince myself maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. Maybe he just made a stupid mistake. But then, a few days later, I saw another photo. It was posted by the club. There he was again, dancing with a girl, leaning in close, whispering something to her. My hands went cold. I confronted him. He looked at me and said, "You're overthinking it. We were just talking." I don't even remember her name. I wanted to believe him so badly. I really did. But doubt is like a shadow. Once it appears, it never fully leaves. That night, after he fell asleep, I found her on social media. It took me an hour, but I found her. My heart was pounding as I typed her name into the search bar. When I finally saw her profile picture, the same girl from the photo, I felt my stomach twist. I sent her a message. I didn't even know what to say, so I just wrote, "Hi, I'm his partner. I just had a baby with him. Can I ask what happened that night?" She replied the next morning. Her message was short, polite, but it shattered me completely. She said, "We kissed once. He never said he had a girlfriend or a baby. He told me he was single. We went to another club but left early. He wasn't flirty after that." I stared at that message for a long time. My chest felt heavy. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry right away. It was like my body didn't know how to react. When I confronted him again, he swore it meant nothing. He said, "It was just a stupid mistake. I was drunk. I don't even remember kissing her." I asked him, "Do you remember lying to me? Do you remember using our baby's money for that night?" He didn't answer. He looked ashamed, but also defensive, like he was angry at me for finding out. He said, "You're making this worse. I already said I'm sorry." I said, "You never said sorry." And he didn't. He just looked at me, sighed, and walked away. For days I couldn't eat. Every time I looked at my baby, I felt both love and guilt. Love for the innocence. In his eyes, guilt for bringing him into a world that suddenly felt unsafe. Postpartum depression hit harder after that. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want people to know what had happened. I felt like if I stayed quiet, maybe it would stop hurting. But silence doesn't heal. It just hides the pain for a while. He started acting like nothing happened. He'd hold the baby, kiss my forehead, and say things like, "Let's just move forward." But how do you move forward when the ground beneath you still feels cracked? We'd argue sometimes, small things that turned big. If I cried, he'd say, "You're so sensitive. I can't say anything without you twisting it." If I tried to explain how I felt, he'd say, "You should get over it already." And when the arguments got heated, he'd throw words at me like knives. "If you don't like it, leave. Do the same thing then, see how I feel." Or worse, I don't even care anymore. Each time I felt a part of me shrink a little smaller. I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe I was overreacting, if maybe I expected too much. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't asking for too much. I was asking for honesty, respect, love. The same things I had given him freely. At night, when he'd sleep beside me, I'd look at him and try to remember the man I met at that cafe, the man who said, "If you find peace, let me know." And I'd whisper quietly to myself, "I did find peace once. It was you. But now, you're the one who took it away." Still, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I was scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of raising my baby without him. I kept hoping he'd change, that the guilt he claimed to feel would finally turn into action. He said he loved me. He said he regretted everything. But love without respect is just a word, and regret without change is just noise. I started realizing that love isn't supposed to make you feel small. It isn't supposed to make you cry quietly while someone sleeps beside you, pretending not to notice. I was holding on to a version of him that didn't exist anymore. And maybe deep down, I knew I was holding on to someone who never really saw me the way I saw him. Days turned into weeks, but nothing really changed. He still came and went as he pleased, and I still tried to pretend we were okay. Some mornings he'd kiss the baby and tell me he loved us, and for a second I'd let myself believe it. But then I'd look at his phone lighting up with names I didn't recognize, or I'd see him turn away when I walked into the room, and the illusion would fade all over again. It's strange how you can live in the same house with someone and still feel like a ghost. I'd walk past him in the hallway and feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. There were moments when I'd open my mouth to speak, to tell him how lonely I felt. But then he'd sigh or check his phone, and I'd swallow my words back down. The silence between us became a language of its own. It said everything we were too tired to explain. At night, I'd feed the baby, rocking him in the dim light of the nursery. Sometimes I'd hum just to fill the quiet. Other times I'd stare at the small rise and fall of his chest and think, he deserves more than this. One evening, I caught myself staring at the reflection of the two of us. Me, pale and exhausted, and him, lying on the couch, scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. And it hit me. This wasn't the life I dreamed of when I said yes to love. This wasn't the home I wanted my son to grow up in. Still, I didn't have the strength to leave. Not yet. It wasn't just fear of being alone. It was exhaustion, confusion, that stubborn hope that maybe he'd wake up one morning and remember who he used to be. But then came the day that changed everything. It was early morning. The baby had been fussy all night, and I hadn't slept in almost 2 days. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by bottles and baby clothes, trying not to cry. He walked in, yawning, complaining about how tired he was. I looked up at him, his hair messy, his tone careless, and something inside me snapped. I said quietly, "You don't get to be tired." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a deep breath. "It means I've been here. Every night, every cry, every moment, while you've been out drinking, lying, pretending this is normal." He rolled his eyes, said, "You're still on that? I told you it was just a mistake. You can't keep punishing me. Punishing you," I whispered. "You broke my heart while I was healing from childbirth, and you think I'm punishing you?" He looked away, muttering something under his breath. That's when I realized something I hadn't before. He wasn't sorry. Not really. He was only sorry that I found out. That realization hit like cold water. I stopped crying that day, not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because I understood. No amount of tears could make someone respect you if they didn't want to. That night, I fed the baby, laid him down gently, and went to the kitchen. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. He was sitting at the table staring at his phone again. I said softly, "Can we talk?" He sighed. "What now?" I sat across from him. My voice was calm, too calm. "I just need to know. Do you love me? Not the idea of me. Not the comfort. Me." He looked up surprised. "Of course I do. Why are you asking that?" I nodded slowly. "Because when you love someone, you don't keep breaking them and calling it an accident." He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't let him. "I believed in you. I fought for you when people said I shouldn't. And maybe that was my mistake. Thinking love could fix what someone doesn't want to fix themselves." For once, he didn't have an answer. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open, like he didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of him. Because I wasn't the same. I wasn't begging. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't breaking. I was done. But done doesn't always mean walking out the door. Sometimes it means walking away inside your heart first, closing the door quietly, while the other person still thinks it's open. In the days that followed, I changed. Slowly, quietly. I stopped asking where he was going. I stopped waiting for him to come home. I started focusing on my baby. His little smiles, his sleepy noises, the warmth of his tiny hands gripping my finger. That's where my peace began, in those small, ordinary moments. Every morning, I'd make myself a cup of tea, even when I was tired. I'd sit by the window and just breathe. I'd tell myself, "You're still here. You're still trying. That's enough." And slowly I began to believe it. He noticed the change too. One evening he asked, "Why are you so quiet lately?" I smiled faintly. Because not everything deserves a reaction. He didn't know how to respond. He just looked confused. Like he couldn't understand how the woman who once begged him to listen now didn't need him to anymore. But that's the thing about emotional detachment. It's not loud. It's silent. It's peaceful. It's the quiet decision that says, "I can't make you love me the way I deserve, but I can love myself enough to stop letting you hurt me." I started journaling at night, writing down every feeling, every thought I couldn't say out loud. Sometimes I'd write letters to him, not to send, just to get the pain out. Letters that began with, "I wish you had stayed faithful," and ended with, "I forgive you anyway." Forgiveness didn't come easy. Some nights I'd cry until my pillow was wet, whispering, "Why wasn't I enough?" But then I'd look at my son, my little boy sleeping peacefully, and realize I was enough. I was enough for him, and that had to be enough for me too. One night he came home late again. I didn't ask where he'd been. He looked at me and said, "You don't care anymore, do you?" I looked up from the baby's blanket I was folding and said, "I do care. I just don't chase pain anymore." He stared at me for a long time, like the words didn't make sense, and maybe they didn't. Not to someone who thought love only existed when it came with chaos. I used to think that being strong meant staying no matter what. Now, I know it means knowing when to stop trying. Weeks passed and our lives became quiet. Too quiet. We barely talked. We lived like roommates who happened to share a baby. Sometimes he'd try to joke, make small talk like he was testing the water, but my heart had already drifted away. One afternoon, I was holding my baby by the window, the sun spilling gently across the floor. He giggled, that sweet sound that always made me melt, and I whispered to him, "Mommy's going to be okay. I promise." For the first time, I meant it. That night, I made a small decision, one that would change everything. I started setting money aside, just little bits, whatever I could. I didn't tell him. It wasn't about leaving yet. It was about preparing for peace. Because sometimes, healing starts with planning your freedom quietly. He noticed I was distant. One night, during another argument, he said, "You act like you're done with me." I looked at him, calm, tired but steady. "I'm not acting." He got defensive, said all the usual things. That I was dramatic, that no one else would put up with me, that I'd never manage alone with a baby. And I listened, but I didn't absorb any of it, because when you start to heal, their words stop sounding like truth and start sounding like noise. I realized then that I didn't need his permission to rebuild my life. I just needed my own courage. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat beside the crib and whispered to my baby, "We're going to be okay. One day we'll have peace again. Real peace." And for the first time in months, I slept deeply. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally believed that it could be. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. My eyes were tired, my hair messy. But there was something different in my reflection. Something fierce. It wasn't anger. It was quiet strength. The kind that grows out of pain when you finally stop trying to fix what broke you. I didn't know what the future would look like. I didn't know how long it would take to feel whole again. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to who I was before. And that, I realized, was the true turning point. Not the night he lied, not the night I cried, but the moment I looked at myself and thought, "You're stronger than what hurt you." I don't really remember when the noise inside my head began to fade. Maybe it was one of those long nights when the baby finally fell asleep, and the house was still. Or maybe it was after another one of our arguments, when I realized I wasn't crying as much anymore. It wasn't strength at first, it was exhaustion. Pure, heavy exhaustion that made me too tired to keep breaking over the same thing again. He still came home every night now, sometimes earlier, sometimes late. I could tell he was trying in his own way. Bringing small things, asking if I'd eaten, changing the baby's diaper once in a while. But it all felt thin, like the difference between a shadow and the real thing. He was there, but the warmth was gone. I used to look for his eyes when he walked into the room. Now I mostly looked away, not because I hated him, but because every glance felt like reopening a wound that was almost starting to heal. I began doing little things differently. When he'd leave the room after snapping at me, I stopped following to ask what was wrong. When he'd roll his eyes at something small, I didn't explain myself anymore. I just went quiet. That silence at first scared me, because it felt like losing hope. But slowly it became something else. It became space. It became peace. There was one evening. I remember it vividly. He came home from work, dropped his jacket on the chair, and sat down without saying a word. The TV was on. The baby was in my arms, and I was humming quietly to him. The light from the lamp made the room look warm. But inside me, something had changed completely. He said, "Why are you so quiet lately?" And I said, "Because when I talk, you don't really hear me." He looked at me for a second, like he didn't understand. Then he went back to looking at his phone. That moment told me everything. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Days passed like that. Calm, almost peaceful. If I didn't think too hard, I'd wake up early to feed the baby, make breakfast, fold laundry. He'd go to work. Sometimes we'd exchange a few words. Sometimes we wouldn't. I started enjoying being alone more than being around him. I'd sit near the window when the baby napped, drink tea and just watch the street. There was a quiet comfort in that. No noise. No pretending. I began noticing how much I'd lost myself in the chaos of loving him. I'd stopped doing my hair, stopped listening to music, stopped journaling. All the little things that used to make me feel like me. One morning, while he was still asleep, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes looked tired but calmer. I brushed my hair, tied it neatly, and said softly to my reflection, "You're still here." That small whisper felt like the first kind thing I'd said to myself in months. He did apologize sometimes. He'd come sit next to me, put a hand on my knee, and say he was sorry. He'd talk about wanting to be better, about how he hated seeing me hurt, and I'd nod. Not because I forgave him right away, but because I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. Once he asked, "Do you still love me?" I hesitated before answering. Finally, I said, "Yes, but not the same way anymore." He frowned, confused, and I think that hurt him more than any angry words ever could. Nights were the hardest. When the baby slept, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about how love could turn from safety to silence, so slowly you almost didn't notice. I'd remember the night he left me alone, 2 months after giving birth, and how small and scared I felt. That memory still sat deep inside me. No apology could erase the image of me sitting on the bed, holding my baby, wondering if I wasn't enough to keep someone faithful. But with time, I began realizing, maybe it wasn't about me being enough. Maybe it was about him not being ready to love the way I needed to be loved. That realization didn't bring peace right away, but it stopped the self-blame from eating me alive. Some afternoons I'd take the baby for a walk in the park. The wind would brush against my face, and for a few moments I felt light. I'd see mothers pushing strollers, couples laughing, kids playing. Life kept going, even when mine had paused. I started talking to a few of the other moms, just small conversations, but they reminded me that I wasn't invisible. One woman told me, "It gets easier, sweetheart. You find yourself again piece by piece." I smiled, not sure if I believed her yet, but I wanted to. There was a day when he came home early. He saw me sitting on the floor, playing with our son. He smiled, that same smile that used to melt me, and for a second I almost felt that old pull again. Then I remembered how it felt waiting for him that night, how it felt to check my phone every 5 minutes, hoping for a message that never came, how it felt seeing that photo of him leaning close to another woman while I was at home with his child. The smile faded, not because I hated him, but because the woman who once needed him to feel complete was slowly learning to live without him. I started keeping a small notebook beside my bed. Each night I'd write one line, something I'd learned, something I'd felt, or something I wanted to remember. At first they were short and shaky. Today I didn't cry. I smiled when my baby giggled. I made dinner and it tasted good. Then they started changing. I deserve to be respected. Love shouldn't hurt this much. I am learning to be okay. That little notebook became my quiet friend. A place to breathe when words were too heavy to say out loud. He noticed the changes too. He started asking, why don't you talk to me anymore? I wanted to tell him. Because talking felt like pouring my heart into a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Everything I said just slipped away. But I didn't say that. I just said, I'm tired, that's all. He said he wanted to fix things. He said he loved me, that he didn't want to lose his family. And maybe he meant it. But love after betrayal isn't simple. It's not about words. It's about feeling safe again. And I didn't. Not yet. Weeks turned into months. Our home was quieter, calmer, but not happier. I think he noticed that too. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me, like he was trying to find the woman who used to light up around him. But she wasn't there anymore. Instead, there was someone softer, quieter, stronger. Someone who was finally starting to see her worth. One night, he reached for my hand in bed, and for a moment I let him hold it. It felt warm, familiar, safe, but not the same. I whispered, I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again. He said, I know. We didn't talk after that, just lay there in silence. And for once, that silence didn't hurt, it just was. Now when I look at him, I don't feel the same ache. I feel sadness sometimes, for what we lost, for the version of us that could have been. But mostly, I feel acceptance. I still don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day we'll find our way back. Maybe one day, I'll decide to walk away for good. Right now, I'm just learning how to be okay in the middle. Not broken, not healed, just in between. Every night, before bed, I look at my baby's little face and remind myself, this is why I stay calm. This is why I keep going. Because even if my heart feels unsure, my love for my child is steady. That's the one thing no one can take away from me. Sometimes when he plays with our son and laughs, I catch myself smiling. Not for him, but for the small moments that still matter. Other times when he walks out the door, I feel nothing, just quiet. And that's okay too. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy and slow and full of questions that don't have answers yet. But for the first time in months, I don't feel trapped. I feel awake. Now, as I sit here telling you all this, the baby is asleep beside me. His tiny breath soft and steady. The house is silent again. And in that silence, I hear myself think. Really think? For the first time in a long time. I still don't know what to do next. Should I stay and hope he truly changes? Should I leave and start over even if it scares me? I don't have those answers yet. But maybe you do. Tell me, if you were me, if you just had a baby, been lied to, hurt and yet still loved him, what would you do? Would you give him another chance? Or finally choose yourself? It's strange how life goes quiet after the storm. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind where everything just settles, where you're no longer waiting for an apology or chasing an explanation. You just accept that it happened, that it hurt, and that somehow you're still here. The baby sleeps better now. His little hands curl around my fingers. His soft breathing fills the silence that used to ache. Sometimes I watch him sleep and wonder what kind of love he'll grow up seeing. Will he see strength or sadness? Forgiveness or distance? Maybe all of it. Because real life isn't neat. It's a mix of both. I still think about that night sometimes. The one where he said he was being taken by police. And I sat there alone, holding my baby, trying to stay calm while my heart broke piece by piece. It's a memory that lives inside me quietly now. It doesn't scream anymore. It just whispers. A reminder of how far I've come and how much it took to still stay standing. He's been trying more lately. I can see it. Small efforts, softer tone, little gestures that might have meant the world a year ago. But now, they feel like dust settling on something already cracked. You can try to clean it, polish it, pretend it's new again, but you'll always know what's underneath. I don't hate him. I don't even think I could. He's the father of my child, and once he was my safe place. Now he's just someone I'm learning how to live beside, without losing myself. There are days I still feel lonely, even when he's right there, sitting beside me scrolling through his phone. It's a strange kind of loneliness. Not from being alone, but from being unseen. I think that's what hurts most. But on those days, I hold my baby a little closer. I remind myself that I am seen by the tiny eyes that look up at me with complete trust. That's enough to get through most nights. I've started doing small things just for me again. I make a cup of tea before bed, even if it's gone cold by the time I drink it. I play old songs that used to make me feel alive. I light a candle sometimes, just to make the room smell nice. Little things. But they remind me that I exist outside of heartbreak. Sometimes I talk to myself quietly when no one's around. Not the kind of talking where you're going crazy. Just gentle conversations with the woman inside me who forgot she mattered. I tell her she's doing okay. I tell her it's not her fault. And I tell her that healing doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it just means learning how to stay without losing yourself completely. People might look at me and wonder why I stayed. Maybe they'd call me weak. Maybe they'd say I deserve better. And maybe they're right. But life isn't that simple when love is involved, especially when there's a baby who smiles like both of us. Sometimes love isn't about walking away right away. It's about standing still long enough to understand what's truly left. And right now, I'm still figuring that out. He asked me once, "Do you think we'll ever be the same again?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. We won't. But that doesn't mean we can't be something different. Maybe not lovers like before. Maybe not enemies either. Just two people trying to raise a child, doing their best with the pieces left behind. There's a kind of quiet peace in that thought. It's not happy, but it's real. Sometimes at night when everything's still, I find myself scrolling through old photos. The smiles, the laughter, the little moments before everything changed. And I don't cry anymore. I just look at them and whisper, "Thank you for teaching me." Because that love, even though it broke me, also showed me who I am when I have nothing left but my own strength. And maybe that's worth something too. The truth is, I still don't know what to do. I don't know if I'll stay forever or leave someday when the ache becomes too heavy. I don't know if he'll ever change or if we'll just keep pretending that love alone can fix what trust destroyed. But I do know this. I'll never stop trying to find peace, even if it means finding it alone. So, here I am, sitting on the couch, the baby monitor beside me, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the room. He's asleep in the other room, and for the first time in a long time, I don't feel desperate for his attention. I just feel calm. Not happy, not sad, just calm. I've learned that healing doesn't happen in big, dramatic moments. It happens quietly, in small choices, like choosing silence over arguing, or choosing sleep over endless crying. It happens in forgiveness you don't announce, and strength you don't even realize you found, until one day you wake up and realize the pain it doesn't control you anymore. So maybe this isn't the ending. Maybe it's just the middle. The part where I learn, breathe, and grow. The part where I finally stop waiting for someone else to love me the way I should love myself. And maybe that's okay. Maybe being in between is still progress. I don't have all the answers. Maybe I never will. But tonight I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Peace, even in the uncertainty. And that's enough for now. Still, sometimes I wonder, if you were me, if you had a baby you love more than anything, a heart that's been broken but still beating, what would you do? Would you stay, hoping that love can change a man? Or would you leave, trusting that time will heal what love couldn't? I don't know yet, but maybe your answer will help me find mine.